we go. Okay.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Bob Brown. I am the vice chair, and I'll open the meeting today. It is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, and this is a meeting of the planning board of the town of Maynard. It's a hybrid meeting where people are welcome to participate virtually with us. If people are participating virtually, and you want to be recognized, please give our attention by either raising your hands or looking on the little icon, raise your hands, and we'll make sure that we recognize you. Our meeting is being recorded today, and we'll begin with a roll call vote. Jim Coleman.
Here.
Natalie Robert.
Here.
Annette Delahuda.
Here.
And Bill Crenshaw.
Here.
Okay, before we proceed with the minutes, Bill, is there something?
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce our new health director who's been here now, he's not so new, been here about a month. Ivan, and I'll pronounce the last name I always have trouble with.
Oh, I got it. Nice to meet you.
So Ivan has been a terrific addition and we're really happy to have him, and he's interested in all facets of what we're doing. We're getting him master planned and everything, so he'll be around, but I just wanted to make the introduction. Our chair is not here, but the planning board is one of our busiest boards we have, meet twice a month, and from time to time, we'll ask you to participate in certain reviews and things like that.
Sounds good. Thank you. It was nice meeting you.
So as I can all see, we have a big agenda.
The glasses have been, everybody.
Subject matter. Hey. Yes, we have the minutes from November 22nd.
So, Bill, I was recused from the public hearing discussion in the process. And so my question for you is, should we wait for Chris to do the approval of the minutes? or-
Yeah, no, minutes can be approved by even just a simple majority, and you don't have to have participated at the meeting, actually. But does it, now you did make a good point. Did we not put you that you were recused in there?
No, it's in there.
Oh, okay, all right, okay, good. Yeah.
Are there any comments about the minutes? Or would you like more time to review them?
I'm good, Willie.
That there's the fine thing. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from November 22nd, 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's do the roll call vote. Yeah. Yeah. Yes,
Yes.
okay. Bill,
Yes.
Natalie,
Yes.
June,
Yes.
let the record show that the minutes pass 4-0.
Perfect. Okay, and the only other items we have are other than this item is about road plan, so we can either, I don't have any updates, I would give you those now really, but we don't have much except the town meeting. You saw the dates, I sent you all the invitation on that. And that our next meeting on January 10th is going to feature our proposed zoning bylaw amendments. And Mr. Crenshaw is going to, I think you're gonna warm that one up.
I am not.
Oh. Okay.
That's gonna be Chris.
Yeah.
Now, January 10th is also our compliance meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I figure we do that first, and, you know.
And potentially one more public hearing, but
If you're big one.
Yeah, I'm. There's one business, they're trying to get everything in, and tomorrow is like the absolute last day I can try to take it. So I don't know if that's gonna come in on time, but. Yes, that's,
Bill, what's the deadline for closing the hearing on the articles?
Closing the hearing,
Yeah,
they have to be submitted at the end of February.
February 25th.
Yeah, but close, I don't,
So as long as it's closed before then.
no, it can, the warrant can be closed. I mean, it can change up to a certain point, but. I
okay,
would,
so we don't have to get it all done on the 10th.
no, oh no, that's why we want to get that, going. Oh, no. No, we should have a couple of. Meetings without any real pressure, time wise on that.
I think our expectation was that we wanted to open it as soon as possible to allow you guys to discuss. That you-
And then, yeah, so that's basically all that we have on. I think that's it for, so we can go, if it's your pleasure, we can open this hearing and then that can, full board, and then when, Chris comes in. He can pop in. We also asked Wayne to join us if there's any questions, so maybe we should start with, if there's any questions from him. I don't know how your schedule is, but.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
All right. So Tim has his presentation. I have the same, everything up here, Tim, and I can just, if this is okay, you can tell me what you want and I'll just change it.
You just need to share the screen.
Well, when you're ready,
When he presents to share the screen
right,
to allow the for online participants to see what you're
Yeah.
liking.
Makes sense.
okay.
Okay.
We will open public hearing on the special permit and site plan application filed by Studio In Situ Architects at 63 Main Street, Maynard, on behalf of Sugarloaf Maynard LLC from 16 Holborn Road in Belmont, consistent with sections 3.0, 7.9, 9.46, and 10.0 of the zoning bylaws. The petitioner is requesting a special permit and site plan approval to operate a marijuana retail establishment in the central business zoning district, downtown overlay district at 25 Mason Street. Before we turn it over to Tim, is there any comments you want to make, Bill, to set it up?
The background on the application requirements, I think the board is familiar with. I think we went over them last time, but basically what the applicant is requesting, first of all, is a special permit for a retail marijuana establishment. The reason the site plan is required to be reviewed is because any alteration in the central business district, any alteration to the parking requires a site plan review. In this case, the chair got with Wayne and they have a relatively, limited site plan review because it is, there's some improvements in Mr. Hess will show you in the back there. And then lastly, there are some design review requirements that the applicant will be addressing as well too. Not basically what is done in the case of design reviews, they will demonstrate how it meets or is consistent with our criteria, and the board will make a determination on.
So if I could just clarify, does the project require site plan review because of its location in the central zoning district?
Exactly.
Right, it's not because of the changes in the parking. It's just because.
No, we've had this a couple of times with some projects that have limited, they're having a little limited reconfiguration. Or, but in the central business district, any change to a parking layout or that may affect adjacent parking is required to have a level of site plan review. You may recall we had to do it with the theater cream, the ice cream
Mhm.
theater ice cream, and it was like, well, why were we doing that? And it was because there was a change there, that was made to, I guess, the parking. But
I think it was a pedestrian access.
something, yeah, but there's, so in downtown, it's treated a little more. There's a little more scrutiny with it. So in this case, it's a question, I think it was boiled down to circulation, safety, and potential impact on the municipal lot, if there was any.
So we're going to do the site plan review and the design review, and then the special permit, right? So those are three separate decisions?
We can roll them, here comes Chris. We want to, we have our findings are all going to be separate. So we would say in this, like, for example, we said we find it's consistent with the design review criteria. We find we're not looking for consistency with a site plan review as so much as we're looking for, it's consistent with. It meets the zoning bylaws. It either does. And then we'll go through the criteria for special permit. Both for the standard state required special permit findings and then the downtown overlay district findings. So that would be how it would work. So far as the vote, I would recommend that we probably do them separate. It's probably easier to do it separate, keeps it neat. But we have at times, particularly, as long as the findings are documented in each finding
Mhm.
is there, they can roll it in one vote if they want, if you want to. We did that last time, I remember. So that's what we're looking at tonight. The reason I asked Wayne was because of, he had a chance to take a look at the plans and have some comments. I don't know, he hasn't completed his review totally, I don't believe at this point, but he can explain where's. And that's what we got.
Thank you. Welcome, Chris. Open the public hearing. And Dennis just gave us the overview of our charge of this evening. And we're ready to begin with Hess's presentation.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. I'm Tim Hess from Student C2 Architects Incorporated at 63 Main Street, right down the road. I'm here with Flavia Hungaro, owner of Sugarloaf, the dispensary proposing to go into the space, which is roughly speaking, the north half of Arts Building at 25 Mason Street. We're joined by Sugarloaf's attorney, Walter Sullivan, and security consultant, Rick Nagel. I guess maybe what I'll do tonight, tell me if this makes sense. I'll just kind of stand up and ask Bill to flip us through the graphic components of the application and give a little introduction to them. In terms of our case that we meet the criteria, if it makes sense to sort of enumerate that, I'm gonna have to rely a little more heavily on my notes. We've had a bit of a break and it's not really top of mind, but I'll refer back to those. I guess I'm a little concerned that may end up long-winded, so if you guys can imagine an abbreviated way through that, I'm all for it. But why don't we start with just a kind of introduction to the graphic stuff.
Okay.
Really that hits kind of the high level. So I think we're all pretty familiar with the location and this north half of the building. Presently, the arts business enters through the former BOA entry. There's a lobby back there. We are proposing a new entry here. We will not share circulation with art at all. There'll be a new front door here, a new, I think we call it a man lock or some sort of a security. A sally port. We don't call it a man lock. And then the bulk of the business is behind that front of house, where there's the kind of retail exchange. Is a relatively small fraction of the building, all toward Nason Street. Back of house is roughly speaking, the back northeast quadrant of the upper floor. Our exit to the east is straight down the middle and down and out through. You're all probably pretty familiar with what used to be the little kind of an ATM station in the back. Next slide, Bill. Yeah, so we'll have our exit here. And you'll see a little bit later on, we are proposing some reconfiguration, or really just a kind of enhancement of what's there existing today. We're also proposing a little bit of a kind of a court space here, contained by or sort of defined by a small masonry sitting wall, which would provide some kind of vehicular protection, serve sort of as bollards, but we think a more attractive kind of bollard security provision for kind of pedestrian activity on that little spot. And it also would serve as public seating in lieu of a bench or something similar. I will share, I don't know if we've got staff reports from Chief Stowers and Chief Noble, but we did vet this with them. We were primarily concerned about the relationship of this crosshatched area, which is labeled fire zone, fire lane. You can read, sort of crudely speaking, if you can see where the character of the pavement changes. This corresponds not imprecisely with the property line. Wayne, you may recognize this, everybody might recognize it. It's a VHB survey produced just a couple years ago, so we just stole a snapshot of it. Art's parcel, Art as the landlord of the space, his parcel stretches from the former Middlesex all the way to Babco's there, so both of these.
Sorry to interrupt, if you're just,
Yep.
you just have to refer to things on the screen, so that way the public can see what you're doing.
Thank you so much, I appreciate that reminder. Thanks, Bill. So the red is just an outline of the parcel in question, and I was just pointing out that we had some concern about the role and the need for public safety as it relates to that hash marked area. And I don't know whether they're on the record yet or not with it, but we do have feedback from Chief Stowers and Chief Noble that they have no issues with that. Okay. What are the graphics that we got?
Go back up.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next one down. Thank you. So along this long flank, we propose just a little bit of restriping there. We went out on site, took our own measurements and applied the parking standards, and we feel like there is a space to be had, an additional space to be had. So we propose to restripe this. We go from 10 to 11 or 11 to 12. I forget what it is, but we get one more. We're also trying to sort of scratch the surface from an environmental kind of conservation standpoint. This is sort of radically 100% impervious right now, and in a couple small ways, we're proposing to improve that by adding just a couple of little green patches, one up here, one toward the center, and a third around the back. Our site plan also shows some bike racks here, space for potential scooters and other transportation alternatives. We've got a spot where we propose to include what would probably be a trickle charger, a spot for 2 electric car chargers. Not at all likely that it would be a supercharger, the kind of thing that could bring your Tesla up from 0 to full in 2 hours. But something much more sort of low voltage, low amperage, whatever it would be in there.
we propose to offer the bulk of this surface area here for the use of the Maynard to Canvas program. So that Eric and company or whoever is staffing that organization these days can do their thing there. Go ahead, Bill. Thank you.
A little smaller there.
Yeah, I guess another thing worth pointing out,
That's good,
the,
Tim.
yes, thank you. So, Nason Street here, our proposal preserves the, public access and one-way traffic through this space. You guys will all know, but maybe some of the members of the public tuning in by Zoom may not know that this is all private land. This is not a public way. But this proposal proposes to maintain the offered use of that, I guess, for public use. And we think it's valuable to kind of preserve the vehicular transportation into the basin or Naylor Court. And we think that through these little bits of green space and the addition of a mural there, it would also enhance the kind of connectivity and the pedestrian experience between Nason and the basin. What else about this? So the parcel is outlined in red. Really, our proposal is limited to really the north half. It may, yeah, I don't think we stretch to the south half at all. So none of what happens over here is really in question, or we're not proposing to do anything there. Flavia's and Sugarloaf's lease space is limited to the north half of the building, totally unrelated to the other side, whatever Art or others may propose there, we don't know about it. Next one, Bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
This guy.
Yeah, so these are floor plans. Not sure how helpful or relevant these may be for tonight's discussion, but I'll just share that this is Nason Street. We're proposing a new entry here. We divide the current vestibule. So there's no shared circulation here. This is walled off and it's a separate exit. Through there, front of house is really limited here. This would be some of the sort of retail folks that you'd do business, kind of conduct business with. But as a customer, you would not have any visibility or access to anything in the back half. So that's all that.
Going.
Yeah, thank you. Right, here's our site plan. So I mentioned bike racks, a little patch of green space here. We're showing our first three spaces are compact. I don't think they are ID'd as compact today, but we know that if you measure a 12-foot travel lane there, you can't fit anything but a compact. So we're showing three compact there. An accessible space here with the loading area. We've got another several conventional length spaces, another handicap here and access to it. A bit more green space here, and then that kind of area of pavers. Our renderings show cobbles. I'm not sure that whether we're committed to cobbles per se, but it's a kind of improved hardscape. It would not be macadam, but something akin to a cobble. And then our sitting wall here, which would sort of serve as bollards and seating at the same time. And the area, I think the next view or two will show some proposed construction and design in this area. And just to understand, it's limited to this bit of plan, and it's so 100% overlap with the existing construction. In fact, we're expecting we can reuse the same foundation. Just while I'm thinking of it, we are we do not expect to have any need or any use of any dumpster facilities at all. We expect that we're gonna be able to manage all of our waste inside the building and bring it out only when, you know, the truck comes by. So there's not gonna be a dumpster outside. Just the representation of a mural there. This is not a particular mural, but would be subject to the program. A quick representation of an awning device over the door. This reminds me, there will have to be a signage component, and we don't have that included tonight. My apologies to you guys and to you guys.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Yes.
Are you planning on staying in the sign regulations for zoning? Or are you gonna ask for a special permit for the sign?
I believe we expect to just play by the rules there.
Okay, then, yeah, this board, they would just give you a straight building permit on that side.
Okay, so it would only be relevant if we wanted to exceed that.
Right, exactly.
That's great. Okay,
Thank you.
I appreciate the clarification. Okay, next. Okay. So this sheet, I think will give you a pretty good sense of the character and the scale and the composition of the little bit of architecture we're imagining and hoping to contribute to, you know, I would say from a civic standpoint to lend a little bit more presence and substance, or bring somebody to the frontage of the basin, which, as we all know, is right now everybody's back door, with some exceptions. So the way this would function is essentially identical to the way that little space functions there now, except that we'll need to add a new exit from the upstairs. You'll recall I mentioned that our exit corridor moves this way on the second floor and then drops down and out here. This is to separate space, not part of the Sugarloaf dispensary. And this space probably would be contiguous with Flavia's space. So I guess just by way of explanation, you know, architecturally, it's our sense that what we have here, you know, we know that through design review, we are encouraged to be sympathetic to and contribute to the kind of composition of the context. And we know the example buildings that are cited, and it is not our contention that we are succeeding in looking like those example buildings. It's our contention that the kind of space provided here and the condition provided here would benefit from a sort of counterpoint, from a kind of a positive tension, a relationship between, you know, something simple and blocky and something more expressive and shaped a little bit, and frankly something new. There aren't a lot of places in the context of our tight little mill town where, in my opinion, something overtly and expressively modern would be complementary or you know, would in a genuine way be an enhancement. And I think this is one of a small number, and maybe that would be true in several places along the basin. I'm not really sure, not ready to assert that, but I think here it makes sense. And I would hope that you guys would agree with that. I think that's it, Bill.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
does anybody want any other slides?
Well, yeah, can I clarify question? I'm still a little lost on what the rear is used for. The lowest level of the rear that we're looking at. What is that? Is that part of this operation?
That's a good question, and it's not.
Part of this permit?
if I can sneak in here. I think it's part of the permit. So the way these spaces work today is there's a door in this position that goes into a little bit of a lobby and into the basement, which is used exclusively by the landlord of the building. And the use of this proposed new space would be up to him. This bit provides the egress corridor that we need from Flavia's space upstairs and is really exit only for those folks. So this construction and the construction here, their relationship to the business of at Sugarloaf is really just that it's in Sugarloaf's interest to be present in a more pleasant way on the basin. Does that kind of answer the question?
How often, who's controlling the ground, on the rear ground? Office space or space, and who's controlling the plaza space, the landlord, or is this tenant leasing that and responsible for it?
So that this space belongs to the tenant, this space belongs to the landlord. And this space, I'm not sure I really have a great question for that, or a great answer for that.
If I may, Walter Sullivan on behalf of the applicant. When we met with the chief, and Rick can explain more, we wanted to ensure, so it's currently designed. That white area of what exists is common space. For both the second floor and the first floor in the basement. What the chief wanted to make sure that our space coming down to the back was just our space, that it wasn't common space with the others. So that's part of the reason for this design. So we come directly from upstairs outside. We don't go into any common space that's controlled by all the tenants. So that's what the chief wanted to happen. He wanted to make sure when we came out of our space that we were coming directly outside and there was no common space. So for security purposes, there would be no, that's gonna be for delivery of product. So there'd be no delivery going into common space. We'd be going from outside directly up into the retail store. Does that make sense to you?
Right, and who controls it?
So
Who controls the footprint?
The triangle of space my presumption was that it would belong to the landlord unless the tenant was renting that outdoor footprint as well.
That makes sense to me. I don't know.
If this explains it, that door that goes into the establishment of the dispensary is controlled by us.
Yeah.
So that'd be total control of us being secure.
The little door that goes up the stairs.
Yes, so anything, and it's only going to be used for delivery. It'll only be used at certain times of the day. During the daylight hours, so it'll be very limited, that door.
The triangle, if I may, the triangle exists to protect the users of this door in particular, and this one as well, by the placement of that thing and the kind of cordoning off of the space between.
I'm just a little lost on what the permit discussion and perhaps conditions could cover. I don't know, I mean. Could a condition cover that plaza? Because it's not part of the tenancy, it sounds like parking is part of the tenancy.
No,
I don't know if it's a plaza is.
it would because it's considered the improvement. I mean, the only reason it's happening is because of this project. So it's an improvement. They're asking for all of the improvements at once. My understanding.
Yeah.
Right, but actually the owners ask.
Well, they're,
Tenants not.
you guys will
No,
be
no,
doing
no,
the
no.
improvement.
So the applicant is the owner of the business,
Right.
not the owner of the real estate.
Yeah, we're just trying to sort out the improvements overall on the back and on the right side of this image we're looking at. will not be rented by the tenant, you know, everything. That's gonna be the landlord's updates, but they're only being done because the addition of the wall to separate out that stairwell and exit from the business, correct?
That's correct.
So that's the only reason that this update is being done and therefore why it's being presented for this. Yeah, at this hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if this is relevant or maybe it's a red herring, but I'm hung up on the question of whether or not it's in Flavia's lease that she has that space, and I don't know, and maybe that's an adjustment that could be made or needs to be made or doesn't need to be made. But the proposal is that we are proposing all of those changes. And we think they're necessary to conduct the business.
I just need clarification at some point from Bill that the proposals that are outside the lease space can be guaranteed. Or the
Yeah.
landlord can just say, screw it, I ain't doing that.
Oh, well, no, if you're approving what we would do in a case like this, if that was, assuming that you wanted to protect. That was gonna be part of the permit, we just say consistent with, shall remain consistent with the plans submitted on this
The
date.
landlord doesn't want to do it, have no permit for the.
You gotta come back to planning board.
Okay.
Let's, may I? Okay, I'd like to structure this conversation a little bit, if that helps. I think we can categorize this in a few different ways. But first, I wanted to get a sense of what your expectations are from a schedule standpoint. You've already alluded to, Tim, that more information may need to be presented later on. At one point, I forget exactly what the item was, but did you have an expectation on how fast you wanted to try to talk through these items? And I just wanted to get a sense of like what our schedule is coming up in January, February, so that, you know, we're not surprising you if we have a busy agenda on a future meeting. So do you have a sense of how fast you're looking to move on this?
Our application is pending before the Cannabis Control Commission. Because Flavia is a social equity applicant as well as a minority and woman-owned business, we get expedited review, which means that our application should be approved within 90 days, which would then give us the ability to present a plan to the Cannabis Control Commission on architectural removal. We can't do any build out at all until the Cannabis Control Board approves it, and that relates to, and that's part of the reason for back, is because it has to be security going directly from outside all the way into our space, and that's why it's separate. So it'll be secured all the way outside.
Do you need approval from us for that to occur?
And what?
To go through the Cannabis Control
So
Commission?
the Cannabis Control Commission, in order to get architectural review done, requires that we have all local permitting, special permitting licenses, whatever the requirement the local community has.
The reason I ask this is that we can just structure our conversation tonight and talk with Wayne and others in town to make sure that you're providing adequate information and we're providing you adequate feedback based on your needs. But if you're saying if this was just a general presentation, then you had some months to wait, we could obviously structure this conversation differently.
Mr. Chair, my advice to Flavia and her team has been that, in my opinion, the changes proposed here are relatively minor and are positive. I presented to them at some risk to myself, I guess, that I didn't see a lot of sticking points here. So the way that translates is my expectation was some small number of iterations of this hearing. I don't mean by that I promise we're going to be open and shut tonight. That's not my expectation, but there would be, you know, a couple of feet. If we don't have staff report or feedback, of course, we're going to need that. And
Yeah, I don't think we can close tonight.
Yeah.
Because we don't have, I think, all the staff inputs. I haven't seen fire and chief provide formal inputs and things like that, so I don't think that's happening tonight. But we can structure this conversation to see if we can help with getting you at least closure. I can't, you know, we're not talking about approval or disapproval, but at least closure. Maybe by next week, perhaps. That might be possible. Is that amenable?
Yeah. Whatever is reasonable, you know, we don't want to put you guys out, but we'd love to be quick.
I don't see a huge so I think we can accomplish something.
Yep.
categorically, it'd be helpful for me to talk about this as one, site plan. Two, design, right, particularly this back sort of facade. And three, I think we have an obligation to get on record and understand the marijuana requirements and circulation and waste and things of that nature, just from a security standpoint, so we'd like to hear more about that too. So those are the three items categorically I wanted to discuss. Does that make sense?
I think with. Will the site plan, can we talk about any of that today, or do you want to go and wait?
So, I have not had a chance to dig into the documents that Tim submitted, however. I do have some initial comments I would like to give Tim and his team after listening to the presentation, whenever the board is ready.
Understood. Let's, well, since we've discussed. We've already started the discussion of design, so let's continue that for now, if that's okay.
Yeah, whatever.
So I had a few questions. This back wall, is this an addition or is this in the footprint as before?
This is in the same footprint.
And where's Joe?
Same footprint, but it's up, right?
Yes, it's an enlargement. It's a kind of vertical extrusion.
Oh, so we have so the image on the top right
Yes.
gives me the impression that it's taller, but the image on the bottom right shows that the building height is the same throughout. Right, maybe it's just my perception.
Yeah, it's probably just the way the color is rendering here. This is a proposed vertical extension, so this new bit is taller. It's also taller here. It's just not reading well from that distance, I guess.
How much taller do you think?
Probably 30 inches. We probably get a number on it up there.
Can you bring up the picture of the, you can just show where the new line would be?
Which one? I'm sorry, Bill?
The
The
existing.
photo of the existing.
Rear building.
Yeah, it's 30 inches taller.
I'm quite certain I know the answer, but you don't need any variance for that, right?
Geez, I don't know what it would be.
What's
The
that?
real picture. Look, photo.
One of the previous plans that had
Photo of the
photograph
back
of
of
white
Keeps going up.
ATM.
And maybe it would be helpful if you want to look at stuff that you could take control.
along with the dumpster.
Okay. There you go. Yep. So what we're proposing fits that footprint right there.
So right along that wall line up under the window.
Yes.
And then this is a first floor in the current condition only.
This is, first floor off of Nason Street's really second floor on Naylor Court. So,
I'm just trying to make sure I understand the perception here. The white itself is a single level first of, you've been calling it the basement level,
yes,
and that doesn't exist up above, right?
that's right. Yep, it's just open,
So
just like you see there.
the addition here would be, and maybe addition is not quite the right word, but your build out would be an additional 8 feet above that, top of that line, roof line.
I think it's probably more than 8, but it's
10.
right there. We're taking a 1-story thing and putting a second volume above it.
Sorry, go ahead.
And that volume will contain both the stairwell from this business and another space to be determined.
Yeah, for sure, the stair needs to go up there, and the question of what happens in there,
That's just,
frankly, I mean, just, to be very transparent, that we believe that the taller volume makes a better contribution to the context of the base. We don't have a great need for it, nor do we understand that art has a great need for it. But we think there's some likelihood that once you've spent the money and gone to the trouble to do the first floor, the second floor is relatively short money, you might as well do it.
I'm asking more, will this need to be part of the condition, or are they allowed to do this downtown?
Yeah, 45 feet, if it's
So that's it,
you don't exceed 45 feet,
The height limitation?
Right.
We do not.
that's the only.
that's what you're asking, right?
Yes.
And the footprint is.
No, in the DOD, you know, operating under. DOD regulations, I don't see any issues.
Can you go back to the
It
site?
would just be the matter of the appearance and the character.
Can you go back to the design of this back facade? It's all the way down at the bottom of the presentation. but- So. I wrote to. Bill and then. Tim about this, a few weeks ago. I was trying to provide a little instruction about. Well, since our design regulations for design review. Require us to compare a particular building. Relative to the buildings next to it, and there's a couple other buildings in town that are referenced. That design is supposed to. Lack of a better word, mimic in a sense, or at least be symmetrical in some sense. The intent of that was to make sure building frontage along Mason and Main Street particularly. Had an alignment of design. So when I looked at this back building, I didn't find that our guidance provided the same sort of intent about. An element that's facing inward towards towards the bowl itself. And so what I asked Tim to do, and asked the team to do, was to provide. Their thoughts on how. This particular design can be aligned with some type of enhancement. It's sort of an anchor point for where it's looking inward. And so that was my perspective on this. And I just wanted to get the board's sense about this particular design. And how Tim described it.
I mean, I'm kind of in the same place with you. My reading of our design regs means this kind of has to be a brick facade that fit all the others. That would be like it out.
I don't know, I mean, I think of it, I guess I thought of it more broadly, in that. It is I mean, what is the back of the building? I'm saying if you look at the other buildings that are facing inward on the basin. There's Elwood Hill, that is not, I don't know, there's a lot of, I feel like there's variations starting already, and what is there, it is brick, sure. But other than that, I don't feel like there's a cohesive. Having the brick back of buildings is not really a cohesive feel that I'm trying to, mimic in my mind. That doesn't feel as important to me as having it be something that contributes in a purposeful and appropriate way. And in terms of scale, this feels appropriate. In terms of looking nice, it feels appropriate. I do think the style is obviously very different, but in my mind, just because when you look around, I mean, I've spent a lot of time at the basin generally and specifically preparing for tonight, and I don't know if I can get on board with just saying it needs to be brick because it's all brick. I mean, that's gonna lead to well, all brick forever, so.
Would it,
Well, if I may, just a point of order, I mean, the design guideline does not refer to brick. Many of the specific examples are brick, and for sure, we have a lot of wonderful brick that we want to be cognizant of, but the only one cited in the guideline that comes to mind that's not brick is the outdoor store, which is enamel plated steel and clapboard, so 0 brick.
So my read of the regs was that the intent was written specifically from. Looking at from Mason and Main Street. And so in this case, if this applicant was proposing this type of design on the front of this building, I see this building as more of an anchor point for the area on the front side. On the back side, I'm tying it to what it's looking at inside that whole area. And I don't see any other design elements to anchor towards that I think are helpful for us. From either from a big picture standpoint, from a planning standpoint, from a future standpoint, or even from a past standpoint. I don't have much looking backwards in the past to see how to anchor a design vision towards what's already presented there. It's not cohesive in my mind in the whole area. And so that's my read on the design regs, is that we can look at this differently because the regs weren't necessarily intended to look at this particular scenario. And what Bill was saying about brick, he was not being specific of that at all brick, but the point's taken that if this was on the front side, I think we would be looking more traditional, and that's kind of how the board has looked at it in the past.
And I appreciate that, and I didn't expect it was literal, I just felt like for the record.
Well, I was literal because I read it as most adjacent buildings are all brick, and the unfortunate way that our design rules are written requires it to be consistent. And I would love for an interpretation such as yours to win out, because I don't want to be stuck with that brick everywhere.
There may be, if I may read, I'm reading a couple of, in the purpose, there's a couple of components here that may give the board some guidance. This is purpose. The purpose of design review is to assure overall high standards of design for downtown building, preserve and enhance the architectural integrity and character of Maynard's existing building stock, to promote a high quality of architecture design in new construction that complements Maynard's historic downtown, and to maintain coherence and harmony with existing buildings in the immediate area and in the neighborhood that exhibit historic and or high quality design features that the board determines meets the best of area architecture. So that's one where, they understand there's going to be some wiggle room there on what an interpretation of that. The second thing, and I think, actually, I'd ask Tim, you could probably explain this, I think this is even more relevant, is about the elements that are, and maybe you could talk to the board about that on 10.6.5, the elements that are in there. And
So just reading directly from it, thanks, Bill. The review of design features to determine the quality and appropriateness of proposed design changes for downtown Maynard, and particularly in relation to the fine old historic buildings, shall include but not be limited to a review of the building of the following features: facades, exterior walls and details, rear and back sides of buildings, windows, doors and entryways, materials and colors, central pedestrian scale features, awnings, canopies, marquees, lighting fixtures and functions, specific storefront features, building systems, signage, landscaping and screening, overall mass and proportion, and the relationship of nearby buildings, sidewalks and streets of the building proposed to be built or altered. So if you back, that is I think that's one sentence.
Yeah.
But I think the crux of it is here. The review is to determine the quality and appropriateness of proposed changes in relation to the fine old historic buildings, and then shall include but not be limited to the very long list of elements. So determining quality and appropriateness of proposed changes in relation to the fine old buildings, including all these elements. Is that helpful?
Again, I've spent time with this last couple of weeks, and my interpretation of that.
let's leave that here to sure.
That I don't have the requisite anchor points in the basin behind this building. if you look at it the same way I would look at Main Street or Nathan Street. So I think by the end of this, it's gonna be helpful for me to see, Tim, maybe a short letter or memo that explains how this ties to, some of the words you used were counterpoint, complementary, enhancement, and contrast with this expressive new design. So I think for me, it's gonna be helpful to see that spelled out, why this basically make the case in writing.
Yep.
And that way, it's gonna be easy for me to understand what that perspective is. Basically, what I'm saying is I don't have the typical. I don't have the common path for us on this one, so we're kind of charting new territory, because I don't find the regs to be adequate enough to describe this circumstance.
Yep.
In general. I get the concept of this counterpoint contrast design of sort of modernistic feel. I get that element. And I can see that being very useful in this particular circumstance for that particular area in the back. So I'm supportive of that particular design.
Yep.
In general, the concept of it. And I just need to understand how I just need to spell it out better for me.
Yeah, you'll need to make some specific findings.
Yes, and I need to make sure it's just.
Yep.
That's all.
Yep.
So that's my perspective. I'm happy to take any other perspectives on this from the board. Yes.
So I'm wondering why you chose the modern architecture instead of more like the colonial architecture that's presently there. And before you respond, also, I think the modern architecture with the combination of that, stone wall out in front. I also went down to the site and stood there trying to imagine what this would look like.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I thought the stone wall was a welcoming, make the place a welcoming space. And I wonder if you could have, if you want to consider as an alternative to doing the stone wall, which I know was intended to allow people to sit on it, instead to put in like planters to divide the space. So at least you could bring in, green colors, from flowers and that sort of thing to make it more attractive to want to go into that space. And my last comment is, I'm also concerned about what happens with that downstairs space, if there's a big window there and what it looks like. So if that's the level where people are going to be, walking around that, they're not looking in the window upstairs, they're looking to see what's there. And if the presentation is, another frosted glass window that you don't see, and there's something visually attractive, it actually, to me, would detract from the basin. So those were, my questions and comments on in reaction to, things to think about.
Yep.
So, if I can return to my first question, I'm just curious about the modern architecture as opposed to the colonial architecture.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I guess, my honest answer is, it's 2022. We haven't been a colony here for an awfully long time. We're not a colonial town and never were a colonial town. The flavor of kind of, I would call it a kind of austere and rugged modernism, like a very simple functional modernism, to me is kind of consistent with the very simple construction of a mill building. And by that, I don't mean I expect anybody to look at that and think, oh, it's like a mill building. But the principles of, very simple composition and doing what needs to be done without adornment and decoration. Feel to me consistent with the kind of simple modernism that's here. Colonial aesthetic things require expensive and complicated millwork and crown molding and pieces and parts that are lovely in places where it can be carried off with some measure of success, even if it's fictional. There are some contexts where I'd say it's effective and compelling narrative. This is not one of those cases. I think what exists there presently and is an example of how, a kind of distortion and sort of diluted colonial style can be manifest, and because it's colonial, it's kind of under the radar and without scrutiny, but I would argue it's really ugly.
Just, so for purposes of use, which is one of the things that we're here for, we do not need that addition. We can meet all the requirements based on the current addition as exists, that's there, meeting the security requirements, what the chief was concerned about. This is being offered to, just to clean up the basement a little. So if you don't like it, we can just get rid of it. And stick with what's there, but this is where, this is an attempt to really make that basin much more of a welcoming place than just the back areas of all the businesses that are on Mason Street and on Main Street. So that's the reason why it's designed the way it is. But for purposes of our use, we don't need the space. We just thought it'd be good for Maynard to clean up the back.
We appreciate that. And the conversation may sound like we're providing constructive feedback, but what I'm actually trying to do is make sure that we're matching our regs. That's what I'm engaging in right now. And so, yeah, we greatly appreciate any support towards enhancing Maynard, for sure.
Can I ask something?
Yes.
So sorry, I just want to get this clear in my head. So the stairwell coming from the new business coming down, that will not, you don't need the new additional space for that stairwell. The stairwell can already be put in.
No, if you can go to the plan, the design for the floor plan, you'll see the stairs coming down. And there's stairs there today that come down into that white.
You will just wall off part of it, so
Right.
then a new doorway can have its own
Right, so
dedicated.
they'll be separate and distinct from the
Okay.
other location.
So no construction needs to be done except interior construction to. put in
wall
the-
it off, right.
To wall it off, okay. I think I got my.
We need to add a door that's not there today.
Yes, add a door in the back.
So
Yeah.
customers are entering through the Mason.
Mason Street only.
So this is for delivery of product.
And exit, yeah.
No, we're gonna have I'll let Rick talk more.
Fire exit, it's not public.
Yeah, we're gonna have the employees come in and out of the front, but it is an exit and it needs to be fire exit. The idea is to create as much security as possible for product, so there's only small amount of use of that during the day to ensure cameras will be set up going up and down the stairs in our space, out in the back. We'll all have security cameras.
I want to get to that. Is there any more feedback on design?
Yeah. Can we talk about the other sides of the building?
Sure.
So-
So we're clear, the proposed other sides of the building, the design enhancements is mural. Tim, that's correct?
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're representing mural here. We are not proposing that mural. We're proposing to offer the space to the mural pros.
So what I'm trying to understand is whether there is a guarantee that there will be a mural. All I'm hearing is that they would allow somebody to put one there if somebody wanted to, but there's no guarantee that that will ever happen because they're not offering money to make it happen or anything like that.
So procedurally, from a process standpoint, Tim, you alluded to an entity in town that does mural.
Yes, I'm sorry, I assumed you'd be familiar with it. I'm not sure of its official status, but there is. You know, some 5-6 years ago, several members of the cultural council created a group called Maynard as a Canvas. Conducted a number of competitions. The Murphy and Snyder Building has the 2 first examples. I believe the same group conducted the basin mural at the big retaining wall. So it would be that group and it would be that process. So and I think it's probably fair to say that we wouldn't guarantee that a mural shows up. We're just guaranteeing that we make that offer. By the same token, we can't guarantee that the downtown arboretum is gonna plant a tree anywhere, but we are offering to donate 2 trees, the labor to produce 2 tree wells in a location of their choosing. If they don't do it, we're not gonna do it for them.
Okay, when we look at the Mason Street frontage, I'm just curious if anybody has any issues with that or if it's compatible.
Where was that on there?
Design regs.
Yeah, it's gonna be later, Phil.
The proposed version. Well, actually, you might as well remind us what it looks like now. That's what it looks like now.
Yeah, there's that.
And then let's.
And you want the new one?
Yeah.
Yep, and then this is down, okay.
Is the awning is, just, with the building department? I assume, is it not, is the awning part of the request in the special permit here?
No,
No.
Awnings are part of the design,
awning would be considered,
design review.
yeah,
Just
only
have
the,
lighting underneath it.
yeah, the question, oh, I don't know, where is it, It's still down?
Might be on the right hand side of that.
Well, it's on the hard copy to the left here.
Go up, Bill.
Oh,
Now go right.
There you go. Thank you.
Just like the front of 10 Main Street. Are you guys talking about?
There you
the
go,
lights?
perfect, nice, look at that.
Mm.
So the question is, if the applicant wasn't proposing any exterior improvements, would there be a design review? And the answer is no. There would be a need to demonstrate consistency with the downtown overlay district special permit, and we've done that with a number of establishments. But the design review is triggered because of the exterior improvements. If the awning, you know, you're supposed to look at the awning when you look at design review, and I suppose you could say, okay, that's an exterior improvement on that, but I was thinking more in terms of the reconfiguration of the rear of the building would be where the,
Right, but that's a total redesign. I mean, we're losing the grid big window and replacing it with plate windows and a door and.
oh, I'm not suggesting it's
You just
not.
have to say.
No, I'm just saying that,
It's within our reg.
yeah, if they didn't do any improvements, and that's the way it was. Everything, we wouldn't be having a design review.
Is there a need to have the door be exterior on this? Is that part of the security?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So as you may know, the middle door actually can be common for both. Meeting with the chief of police and so forth. No common areas. So what we did was create the door, and Rick will explain security about, you walk into that door, then there's another, person trap door. Instead of a sally port, before you have to show an ID and then go into the retail space. So the design as printed is to ensure the space is separate and distinct from the other space in any common space.
That is unfortunate because this provides an asymmetry towards the building. And I'm not saying it can't be overcome.
Just to clarify, the proposal is that we enter here through this new door. That's the security control point, and exit this way.
In the common space.
In the former, currently common space, but there would be a wall there. What I believe Walter said is that the CCC would allow that to be shared. But Chief Nagel has, or sorry, Chief Noble has said he'd rather not have that be shared, so we propose a partition wall.
Okay. So the current vestibule will be split in half, basically.
For purposes of exiting, yes.
Yeah. And so the right half will remain the entry to art specialties. And the left half will just be a door that is only an exit.
Exit from Sugarloaf.
Right.
Yes.
So the idea is to ensure flow.
Yep.
One, so they come in, they get checked, going out the other door, it'd be 2 doors, the door out of the facility, then in the common space, then out. So it creates a much better security platform.
And Bill, can you remind me? It's like a state reg that they can't actually have anything visible through those windows.
I don't know if it's state or ours.
So the regulation requires that you can't see the retail space from outside. Now, some cities and towns do not allow frosted windows anymore. Because of the look and how it hurts the streetscape. So different designs have come into play where, and I believe, I can't remember, does the wall separate the retail space? Is the wall big enough to separate the retail space?
The wall in here.
Yeah.
Well, no, our retail space is back here.
You can't see.
Sallyport does.
Right, no, but you're coming into the Sally Port, there's a door here, you can't, from outside, you can't see into the retail space. And that's what the Cannabis Control Commission regulations require. So what's happened is some of our designs, we've created the whole front as waiting room, so you can't see, and then you go to another door. Other designs, frosted windows, other designs are. What we've done in some cities and towns is, instead of the frosted windows set back a little bit, would be local artist work being shown through the windows. So you separate out the space from the public, but you're also allowing local art to be seen. And we've done that in Somerville, Cambridge, where they don't allow, especially Cambridge does not allow frosted windows.
I get you have other constraints here. If I'm looking at it just from a design perspective. The proposal creates an asymmetry, which I find unfortunate, and. Please don't take that as a criticism of the project itself, just strictly from a design standpoint, so I'm curious if there's anything. To help with. Because if you look at this building from the frontage currently, at least it has symmetry, we could critique it from other elements, but it has symmetry, and I think what we're doing is removing that symmetry. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I guess I would argue that the symmetry is. You know, in my professional opinion, symmetry is so powerful that it kind of lets you off the hook from any further scrutiny. And that, you know, most often, as we know, we encounter pretty much everything on Nason Street on the oblique. We do not stand at the end of a long reflecting pool and, you know, admire its frontal presentation to us. We encounter it in this kind of way. So, you know, in scale, especially at a pedestrian scale, we really encounter one vignette at a time. We got a pretty pleasant one here. We've got another one here. I would argue that we're enhancing the scale and sense of kind of human scale and pedestrian friendliness of this vignette pretty substantially. Is it on the whole improving the way this whole thing looks? Yeah, fair enough question. I think you know, we don't really have an elevation on that building or that street that's read as a whole in a kind of contiguous fashion, but it's more serial. Here's a window, it looks nice. Here's another window, that looks nice.
Any other thoughts on this frontage?
Would it help if there was a canopy on both sides?
Yeah. Is that door centered in the window? Because on this plan that I have, I think it said. Storefront system centered in width of existing masonry window opening. Is it centered?
I don't believe it's gonna be able to fit in a centered way, given the position of the security requirements there.
There's a security office on one.
Yeah.
And Sally.
That's right.
So it's a discussion about the window treatment, is that going to be presented with the signage discussion later? Is that the deal?
To be clear, by the way, I looked that up at your, in our bylaws. It's no product can be visible in the window. From the street. Or outside, so that was our regulations.
Yeah, and the state goes further. You can't see the flood tenders.
Oh, right, but I guess,
But
Yeah.
the thought of not having it frosted or whatever is great, and you know, if it was. Example, one of your examples of a second art thing or something, I just wanna have that discussion so it can be built into the decision. But I'm just wondering when that would happen, because we mentioned earlier, we might have to talk about science, if that's not ready to be presented.
well, if there's, if the signage, there's regulations.
How about that is regulation, that concept there.
Well, the other thing, keep in mind is that art has 2 signs currently that are not shown in this graphic. So just keep that in mind of like what you were trying to symmetry.
Oh, that would be good to see, wouldn't it?
I believe that our sign is right above the Maynard office sign.
Yeah,
Is there a second one?
yeah, there's actually 2.
Probably bring up a.
Yeah.
President photograph or Google Street View.
I can't show it unless we,
But just
No,
for
because we haven't had it
clarification,
split.
Bill, if we don't propose,
Yeah.
if there exists a ratio of the size of the building to the size of the sign. If we don't propose to exceed that, it's not part of the conversation here at all, as long as we're underneath that.
Right, and that's for you to determine, you know, if you need to come back because. Yep, that's incorrect, that's.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that the exhibits being presented are accurate. So if the exhibits being presented are just showing a pretend signage plan that may or may not be, need a waiver, then they probably shouldn't show it at all. Certainly not as part of the application.
Oh, there, yeah. Does that make sense, Tim? We just want to make sure that what we're
Yep.
presenting for the application is the things that are needed for our approval.
Yep.
Oh, yes. So in my mind, that's 1, but yes, you're right.
it's for sharing the whole entire screen, so if you want to flip back to. The other, you know, you can flip through anything you're sharing, you can flip to the Microsoft Edge. Without having to stop sharing, we're sharing the whole screen, not just a program.
Any other feedback on the frontage?
It reminds me, there's not an existing special permit on this building, is there?
I don't know.
No. There probably, was at one time when the drive, but no, there wasn't a drive through there. No, no.
Yeah, they want.
There was, yeah. So but no, yeah, no.
What's the molding gonna look like on the new door, matching that stuff?
Yes.
Great.
But I have the same concern that you do on the symmetry on the front. I am more of a concern about the symmetry in the front than I do with the new concept in the back, to be honest with you. Is there any way, Tim, that you can mirror the window sizing and all, and still put the door in?
Well, the light divisions could reoccur.
I'm sorry.
The light divisions,
The grid?
The grid.
the grid, right, the small bit are called lights, the grid is called mountain bars.
Well, I'm talking about the heights and of the, so the symmetry of the, looking at it from the front, the height of the windows is as high and as at the bottom as it is. The proposal is pretty close, right?
The proposal preserves precisely that existing brick header as the new header. The sill remains as the sill. the jams north and south remain exactly the same. We need to put a door there to operate the security.
Could you bring up Tim's version of that font again to what this is?
Yeah. Okay,
Microsoft Edge. Nope, you don't need to stop sharing, just go to Microsoft Edge. Yep, there you go.
I see.
It looks like it's not the same, probably because of the awning.
Fair enough. So this mullion there divides a transom from the door at a commercial conventional 7-foot height. So we'd want a conventional commercial 7-foot height here. And it's hard to see, but there's a transom back there. If you were on foot here from, your vantage point, human vantage point, you'd look up and see that aligned. And if we could persuade Art to put another little awning over there, we could have.
Symmetry,
Pretty nice.
you follow the symmetry.
Pretty nice symmetry.
They did that.
Yep.
I could see that as being, for me, more acceptable, looking at this.
And knowing that the windows are going to remain the same size. As you're talking about this, the transom plus the windows surrounding the door is helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we would propose to do without the light divisions, the mounting bars.
Mhm.
And I think there's some pretty good precedent for that, but I don't know that that's a hard, I wouldn't imagine that's a deal breaker in any way, right? If you guys said that's super important to us, and we think it's the difference between.
My myopic view, not being that have any background in building design, would be that and I don't know the terminology, but the grills on the left would be present. That's a myopic view. I don't fully understand the design case for not having.
Yeah, well,
So
I'd love to make that case, but I don't really want to hold up the
Yes.
project,
Yes.
I'd rather just say, we'll give you money.
I'm happy to allow you to spell it out to us.
Yeah.
And I'm very fine with that. So I feel like you can make a good case of this. I'm hearing. It's gonna be helpful just when you get this in a short letter. Just understand it.
Mhm.
I'd like to move on, unless there's anything else that you think might be helpful with this discussion. Is there any clarity?
I understand, just, we can put the windows to match up. We can do enough, however you want, get out to put another door on the other side. Symmetry.
Let me decipher the planning board for you. Generally, I think you're finding that we are typically okay with this. And we don't have any, I'm not hearing any deal breakers. Maybe, hopefully you're not, or I'm not hearing any deal breakers here. This is just how we converse. I think, Tim, do you have a good read on what we're looking at?
I think I do, and I appreciate your having said that, because for the sake of the 10 minutes or 30 minutes effort to persuade you of some things, it's worthwhile. If it stretches out to multiple additional meetings, it's not, but we can decide that. And decide that.
I'm not hearing too much of any real deal breakers here. And I think we're just providing constructive feedback just to understand the perspective.
And one clarification, I don't think anybody is looking for a second big door to be added to the right hand side.
No,
for my notes, does the board like the idea,
I'm not following.
I thought he mentioned that he might.
the second door over here?
Put in another door
Here.
on the other side, but no, I don't, that's not what we're looking.
That's
at.
not part of the discussion.
Just to keep the symmetry.
We're just looking at the window grids, lights, whatever the hell.
What
on both
about,
sides.
what did you guys, one thing I didn't catch was, did you decide, you said that the second awning was preferable, or you didn't?
I don't think it's part of this decision.
Okay, all right, I didn't miss it.
First, I just want to add one thing, because we just talked a little bit about the making the windows opaque or whatever. I would think that if you had the same grid that you have on the right-hand side, that the opaqueness would not be as prominent to the eye as it is when it's all clear.
No,
if
that's
your
exactly
window
right.
is-
You don't notice,
You see what I'm saying?
it stands out too much there.
It does, but it would be less if it was the mullion that we call, when you put them in, I don't know the terminology, Ken, but.
I think you make a good point.
On the right, on the left, if it was clouded or opaque, it wouldn't look as. Like it hits you in the eye.
Something to consider. I'd like to move on, unless there's other comments.
Just one thing, pretty sure I know the answer, but there's no change on the roof, right, that we have to worry about? Nothing's happening up there.
Except that the roof of our bit in the back moves up.
Yeah, but you're not putting.
No HVAC,
Big
no
old
air
fan
handlers,
or.
nothing visual, as in 42 Summer Street. Visual.
Nothing like 42 Summer Street. There may well be new equipment,
Okay.
but
That's fine.
there's a bunch of equipment there now, and it wouldn't be anything that's radically unlike what's there now.
But I think there should be some thought of, screening or something if it was close to the edge, I don't know what, something. Don't want to get burning about that again.
Yeah, I mean, I look out over that roof from my office, so I see there's a bunch of HVAC up there now.
I'm not worried about your office. I'm worried about- Sorry.
I mean, only to convey, we do not have a pristine condition at present.
Okay. Yeah, anything? Yeah,
I like the aesthetic view of having it symmetrical.
Mm.
And if everyone agrees, we have a on off on the other side.
thanks, Matt.
Well,
Wayne, can I keep you a little longer and go to, the operation first?
Sure.
Is that okay? I think it might be helpful for you. Well, can you just discuss through the business operations, circulation side of it, the security element, and one question I have is about waste management as well. So if you come to that.
You want to talk about security? I'll talk about waste management. Okay, you can.
Can you just cover the circulation one more time for us, please?
Do you want me to stand up or speak?
Either way is fine.
I don't know for the audience. First of all, we're going to have cameras. They're not gonna be intrusive for everybody. You have cameras there. And on the outside, they'll be 24/7. It's also good for the community, because God forbid anything happens in the community, we want to work closely with the department. But may not be,
You're gonna put cameras on the outside, the side. So we're gonna need to see that too. As part of the application.
it'll just be 1 or 2 cameras.
We'll need to see the camera heights and all that location and all that stuff. Okay. Sorry,
Um,
keep going.
So the flow, we go in through that door, and then there'll be security there. What they'll have is they'll have what's very concerning is that identification. It's the version for minors, to make sure minors aren't coming. We're gonna use the same equipment that the Pentagon used, Department of Justice uses, Logan Airport, Green Airport. What it is, since we had this incident with 9/11, we have what we call a real ID, it's your license. If you look at your license, there's a minimum of 50 ways to tell it like your license. You can just run your finger over your face and you feel a tactile feature. And when you feel that feature, and I'm trained security, you don't even have to look, you can just tell it's part of the like feeling that license. It's your first 2 initials and the last 2 digits of their birth. They'll look at that, they'll put it in this machine. It identifies project license in all 50 states, Canada, Mexico, and even military identification. Someone asked me in another city, well, what happens if it's a different country? It's a small country. And I really can't identify. Well, we don't have to allow them to come in. If we don't think they're of age, we just politely say, I'm sorry, I'm getting my phone identification. Once the identification is valid, the term used today was Sally. What that means is, people who don't know, you're welcome into that door, but you have a little vestibule. If your identification is wrong, or there's an issue, they certainly aren't going to be allowed in that floor.
Can I try from, could you put up the floor plan? So that way. If you can explain it more.
Yeah, where was that?
Thank you very much.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah, I think it's up.
it's up.
There you go.
that one, go down.
One with the red on it.
There we go, okay.
So once they come into the facility, again, if the ID is valid, you buzz them in, security will be there. The average customer in this facility would probably be less than 2 minutes. They'll come in, they may call prior to, and may be all ready for them. They'll come into what they call a point of sale. They'll come in, they know their product, they give it to, and then what we want is them to leave a separate exit right there, because if there's any congestion or any problems, they're gonna know. So it's in and out. No one has access to the rear. I think what's important here, you know, we're talking about windows and everything else.
I'm sorry, just clarify the exit for the public and academic employees as well is through the lobby where the Amazon locked it in.
The shared space.
Except
Shared
it won't-
space, but it'll be a wall.
It won't be shared anymore.
Correct.
None of it. They're putting a wall down the middle of it.
Exactly. So there's no interaction with customers coming into arts facility. So we'll be leaving there. What's important, we're talking about the windows and products. There'll be no product left on the floor or anywhere in that area at night. Everything will be in a vault. So, God forbid, if anyone breaks into this facility, they're not getting any product. They're gonna have to break into a vault that's probably gonna have a drill time of 30 minutes. So basically, if you break into this facility, there isn't gonna be anything there. So I mean, the window, I mean, what I do is I monitor crimes throughout the United States with these facilities. I have it on Google, where it's a crime in the United States. I look and see what was the issue, what was the problem. I've been doing this now since the onset. I got involved with this in 2013. But I've been doing a few of these. I want to know how they, if there's an issue, what are the issues here? So that's why I like the different exit. That's why there's no product on the floor at night. Everything's locked up. There's not going to be cash. We're going to do frequent cash sweeps, which means you're not going to see thousands of dollars in that facility at night. So if someone wants to break in there, maybe they'll get a picture. I don't know what they're going to hang on the wall, but they're going to have a hard time getting any product or any cash here.
Can you talk about the backside and?
Yeah, so now the rear. The rear is used exclusively for deliveries. We don't want it's gonna be a non-descriptive vehicle. It's not a big GT unit or a truck. It can be a station wagon, it could be an SUV. It's not a lot of product. We want it to come in the rear because we don't want people walking down the street looking at this here. We want to do it early. We don't give the hours when we're gonna do it, but it's gonna be daylight time. That's in the race. So usually back in the rear, security will be there to come in with the product. And they will leave.
Can we go back to the site plan? Is there a designated parking spot for this?
Yes.
Can you talk through the outside circulation of the delivery?
Yes. Is that it here? They're basically gonna come in. And they should be able to pull in here and pull up, so there'll be a entrance and egress, should be very simple. As you pull along the building.
And so the way we're looking at this, where you just pointed, the left side of the figure is the back of the building? Right?
Yes,
Okay. Tim,
that's where Tim had wanted to put that little wall.
But the wall will obstruct pull through, so it's pull in and then back out.
Would that wall obstruct pull through? That shouldn't obstruct the pull through. You should be able to read through that.
Mr. Crenshaw, could you explain? Maybe I'm missing something. I don't think it does.
Can you zoom in there?
Is the delivery going to pull up on the outside of the wall?
No, it'll be right next to the building.
So it will pull in and then back out.
Right, because the current configuration is not wide enough for a truck to pull.
So it won't be a truck, it'll be a vehicle.
the small vehicle.
Right, it'll be either way.
It'll-
Like 4 people.
Can you get over that other side, Tim?
You're not gonna get through, you can't make a circuit through that. It's only like 48 inches at the bottom.
So it'll be adjacent to the building. You'll be there, it'll probably back in and pull out. That's the best way to do it. And then it'll be
Is there-
security
is
with
there
the
a
vehicle.
designated parking space, or is it park wherever you can?
What?
In that,
For delivery?
Designated parking space for the delivery?
Absolutely.
Which one is the designated parking space?
It'll be right there, right along the building. We will have that mark.
Is it the one on the far left or?
It's on the plaza, what he's talking about, whatever
In the
that
patio.
funny, weird little
Right
plaza
here.
I still don't understand is.
That's
So the car, the delivery vehicle will come in. Pause here, make its deliveries and then pull out.
Exactly.
So it's not space 11 or space 10 or space 9.
No.
Rick, tell me if this satisfies your
It's right up
description. If a car, this is too big, a car backed in here,
Exactly.
pulled out like that.
Where's it come from? Does it come from Mason Street? And down this alley where you have your reconfigured parking spaces?
Or anywhere. There are a lot of.
So this is public parking, so how the guy gets here, he could come down Main Street and take a left at Azukar, or he could
I'll
come
be
down
honest with
Mason
you.
and take a left at
I
Vatican.
just wanted to do the same route all the time. Sure. It's a nondescript thing. I don't want, I wouldn't want him to do the same time, same route. I want him to vary it, and I will tell him to vary. So any way he can get in, as long as we know, in advance when they're coming, we will be there, we'll be waiting.
Rick, I apologize. Can you explain how the transportation works about noticing before and coming in?
How the regs work, the transportation company, they have to have a minimum of 2 people. They call in advance, they let us know, we'll be there in about 10 minutes. We have security at the door waiting for them. When they come, they have body cameras. We let them know, they come in, one person has to stay with the vehicle at all times. Our security will escort them in, take the product, inventory it, they leave right away. Or it's in and out real quick, it's not something that's gonna be there.
Excuse me, and the inventory all has to be done on camera. So everything is recorded for surveillance.
And the regs are seed to seal, so you know this product from seed to the person who has it. And that's mandated by the state.
Sorry, for interrupting. From a site plan standpoint, it looks like the proposal is to have the delivery vehicle be in the patio area. And my understanding before this discussion occurred, was that patio area was pedestrian sort of only. That was my assumption. We didn't explicitly discuss that. But I was under the impression, from my own read of the designs only, was that anything on the interior of that wall that has been proposed from a design standpoint was a pedestrian access only type of area, and I was not aware that we were using that area also for vehicular traffic.
I guess I'm just, yeah, to clarify, it seems like the fixed concrete seating wall. 30 feet long, and it stops, it does not go all the way over to the corner of the property line, correct?
And Bill, can you scroll down and
If you can read this little diagram
Where?
from there, you can see that the wall stops about 12 short
you look at
Yeah.
that?
of the property line.
So will that 12-foot wide in between the flush granite curb?
Yep.
And the line in between the end of the seating, concrete seating and the existing brick building, will that be striped?
We,
Bill,
it's
yeah, stop right there.
in the plan right now, it's not designated at all, but we can give it a flush bit of, we can somehow indicate it visually with a stripe or
you mind
whatever else. is
indicating up
fitting.
there? Do you mind indicating up there where this delivery vehicle is going to be pulling in?
I think what we're proposing is that it back into this spot. Is that
So-
consistent? Yeah.
So this is, please take this as constructive feedback, and maybe this is completely fine the way it's laid out and designed. When I saw cobble pavers, I read that as pedestrian only, right? And so I'm wondering if that will present a safety issue for others that also consider it to be pedestrian only, when it has a very different superficial finish.
Well, you said there's gonna have to be, this will have to be marked as a delivery.
I
area.
think some sort of delineation. there.
And security would be in that area prior to the vehicle coming.
We're very used to, and I'm very used to from my background, having anywhere a vehicle can go, particularly for any type of logistical reason, would be marked and very clearly defined by, paints or any other sort of surface feature that it's for vehicles. And so if we were looking at, say, the Market Basket Plaza down the road, anywhere a vehicle delivery would go would have like yellow hash striping and say this is a delivery route. So, I'm not saying it has to be here. But I think we're gonna have to have Wayne weigh in on that too, from a sort of public safety and, you know, that sort of engineering standpoint. And we just may need to work through that a little bit. There might be a solution.
Yeah, I'd also like to understand the period logistics, because I presume during deliveries, you don't want a group of people in the patio space, or you couldn't have it, or maybe there's rules that if you were gonna landscape that wall instead, it would have to be a site obstruction, that wouldn't be allowed, or is there other stuff that comes into play there?
I'll give you an example of a store, a small store that opened up in the state and it only had one entrance. That was it. And in order for them to take deliveries, they actually had to take everyone out of the store, move them down, it was a ramp for them to go out, move them away from the door, and then the delivery truck would back in and go in. So they shut down and it was a crazy way of doing business. But that was approved by the Cannabis Control Commission.
We don't want to go down that path.
No, just,
We don't want to help, we don't want to.
no, just,
But it sounds like.
but I understand this point.
Sounds like cannabis control will not allow other people to be on that patio during delivery.
That's hard to say in the sense because of a number of deliveries are on the street and a number, you know, they park in a loading zone. So there are two people delivering security, no one carries guns, delivering, so. Each location is different, a number of locations don't even have a loading area, they use loading zones that are public loading zones on the street. I have a question, Tim, is there enough space between that wall on the right-hand side to put a loading zone on that side?
Between the wall. Here,
Yeah, right there,
in this gap here,
yeah.
Is that a property line that you're conflicting with?
no, it's not a property line, and no, there's not enough distance there for a vehicle. The property line's here.
I think we need to work out the conflict that this is both being used as a pedestrian access space and also delivery space.
Honestly, I don't have an issue with the delivery space being that area at that end. I just want it different pavement or marked somehow. Something to clarify so that people who are existing in that patio space are aware that a car might be pulling in there. That's it. But I like that it's a spot that's available on the property.
Part of me says that it may be, sorry, Natalie, part of me says that it may be simpler to just pull in front of that wall in the fire zone hatched out area.
Yeah.
And just park there. See, there may be less pedestrian conflicts for sure.
Absolutely.
Right, so Wayne's pointing out that this hashed area exists on, it crosses the boundary from art space into the town.
Yep.
Lot.
So
So right there might make some sense.
I'm instructing Jane and the, sorry for lack of better word, design team, may I call you the design team? Is that okay? Wayne and the design team to work out this conflict between this double use of space for pedestrian vehicles. There's gonna be a security sort of element, there's a vehicular sort of element, and then there's the pedestrian sort of public space too. And they need to all have identity in a sense, because I feel like there's a lack of identity regarding this. I think it can be done.
And
Does that, hold on, sorry, does that make sense?
Does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Sure.
I think you guys can get creative.
Yeah, I would also point out that the left-hand side is a flush granite curtain. So if you really just wanted to pull up parallel to the edge of the building, you could do that as well.
Yeah, I guess I'd be a little cautious about that because this is not town property. Right? That belongs to somebody else, so we don't know that we'll always have access over that. This is town property, we know we'll always have that, well, we expect we'll always have access over that. Does that make sense?
I don't also mind, you know, you probably won't need to do this, but if you needed to lose a parking space to have this designated on it. I mean, I don't mind trading a parking space for a better pedestrian and security. To me, that's a fair trade, more than a fair trade.
Yeah,
So
a good
if
point,
that
too.
helps,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'll leave it to you guys.
And we have to keep in mind that this is also access to an undefined other establishment.
Well, is it, or
Is it not?
I don't,
It's space that is currently unused.
The ATM space,
does it,
because that's now being
You're gonna-
designed as a new something.
There is a potential. That we would have a door, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, we would have a door, there'd be two doors on that new back. One going into our space, the other one going into the space that's currently not used, right?
The door that you see furthest to the right there replicates the access to the space that's there today. So the landlord of that space may have some use in mind, and that use may drive scrutiny from you guys. And that would all happen at that time. Until then, nothing happens there.
from a use standpoint, from a construction standpoint, I think it's helpful to at least consider those elements.
Which elements?
Pedestrian access to that point.
Oh,
Sure, and security. So if your need for security crosses the front of that other area of frontage. I don't think that's helpful for you guys either, because if you're in conflict with another sort of business establishment, I don't think anybody wants that. Not that
I mean,
You know, you mentioned about you don't mind alleviating one parking spot. A lot of these deliveries are gonna be prior to this establishment open during business hours. So we're not competing with consumers. So there'll be ample, all those spots will be open. So if we need be and we have to put it, then we can do that. So we don't have to alleviate a parking spot.
Just a reminder that the closest establishment is a diner that opens at 6 AM.
Are you gonna have,
Are they gonna park in those spots?
You betcha.
well, that's what my question is, are you
they park in the fire lane today. The owners.
allowing, are you gonna put up signs that say, for your business or for art or for anyone in this building? I think right now there is no,
Right now, anybody uses.
yeah, there is no deviation, so
Yes, that would make sense.
just a question.
Yeah, no, I think that's, common sense dictates what people would do.
Yeah, the whole idea is for consumers to come and go within a matter with pretty quickly, so you'd want them to be able to park right next to the building.
But I would point out that the DOD regulations require us to have a finding that the pedestrian and parking environment is improved. And I would have a hard time making that finding if that parking is not communal.
The hard
Or
part
at
is
least- or at least most of it.
right, the property's owned by the landlord. It's not public
I'm
parking.
just saying,
No, no,
we have a regulation that
Yes.
says if you want a special permit, the DOD, the parking and the pedestrian environment has to be substantially improved. And I would have a very hard time picking that.
Well, to be fair, if that's private property, are any of those currently technically parking spaces?
I'm just saying, they're currently parking, it's part of the downtown parking.
But my
Part of the
point is, if
downtown
it's private
pedestrian.
property, then yes, functionally they are parking spaces, but like,
Right,
He could,
Well,
but
it's a little
offense-
different. It reminds me of the conversation on Railroad Street. Where there are a bunch of people under the impression that their lease includes parking space that in fact belongs to the town.
Yeah,
This is different. Those parking spaces belong to the landlord if they've ever been used in any other way. That's certainly not official.
and that has.
And perhaps unauthorized and without permission, and perhaps the landlord is very unhappy about it. We don't know. But certainly to speculate that those spaces are currently part of public parking, I think is a wild reach.
Well, let's look at it this way,
well, it's not necessary. It's only, that's only, remember, Bill, that's only one, you have to find one of the criteria. That's one of the 6. Because there's 5 other ways we
Just
can
give
make
us
it.
the criteria on that.
Put it up here.
No, just read it out loud.
Okay, the proposed, the ones that we're talking about, let's see, is the proposed development will improve the functioning of the downtown by at least one of the following means. A, provide a significant improvement to the usage and or number of public parking spaces in the downtown area. B, provide a significant improvement to the effectiveness of the parking space allocation of the downtown area. C, provide a significant improvement to the pedestrian experience in downtown. D, provide a significant improvement to the water quality of current stormwater runoff reaching the Assabet River. E, increase views and access to the Assabet River. And F, provide a significant improvement to the functioning of the downtown area. And then the one of the 6 of those minimum has to be met. And the others, we know, I can read you the ones that are not optional.
No,
Okay, right.
I would, in the considerate time, I'd like to move on to, the site plan comments. Wayne, can you go through your thoughts on this?
Sure, so as I admitted, I haven't done a thorough review of this. We'll look at this a little closer, but just some comments that I have tonight after hearing the applicant's presentation. I'm just gonna kind of go through these, not in any particular order, Tim, so bear with me, okay? Because I just taking notes as you were talking.
And I assume you're going to reach out and work with.
Sure, yeah, and I will document all this in some form and get it to the applicant as well.
So I'll just list.
Sure, yeah, or you can, whatever, you can write it down because you may be able to come up with some ideas in the meantime. I'm kind of curious on why you're proposing the electric car charging spots. To satisfy what? Because it seems like somebody else could use those as far as patrons.
We imagine it's gonna be appealing to our clients.
Okay,
But they're only gonna be in there for.
that's
2
kind of,
minutes.
that's why I was getting at that because plugging them in for 10 minutes, I'm not sure what that's gonna do. It's just something to consider. You could still propose it, but it just seems to me those 2 spots could be used better elsewhere. We have an electric charging thing, 800 feet away, not even.
Yep.
So something to think about. You might have answered this and this your answer may negate my question, but I'm just curious. You said that the area around the back of the building isn't entirely either municipal or owned by the property owner, so they couldn't, I guess, I'll get to the root of my question. They couldn't remove that fence on the other side of the building and provide some type of circular flow around the building.
The property owner could do that. The
Okay.
business owner could not.
Would they be on private property if you were proposing that flow? Or would they be on public property or the applicant, the building owner's property?
If so the fence is here.
Yeah,
The property line does that. This is the position of the former drive-through.
okay,
So that dimension is probably just wide enough to
Okay.
pass a car through.
so I'm gonna make this comment, if you guys can't do anything about it, that's fine, but I think it's worth
Yep.
discussing, it would be very helpful for the overall operation of this business, really in the whole area, if that fence was removed and people could park, drive around the back and leave on Mason Street, rather than add additional congestion into the basin and have to either exit around the bank on Mason Street or out onto Summer Street or out onto Main Street. It would provide less congestion by adding more cars there.
So you're describing the ideal circumstance would be to enter, park, and then leave that way.
Right, it's something to consider. I mean, if with a traditional establishment, you would hope for more of an operation like that.
From a traffic flow standpoint.
Correct.
Right.
So that's-
Without considering any other. Conflicts, but if you're looking at it from that.
Yeah, clear, I get
No,
it.
but
That's
related
not-
to that, I would think of a focus on pedestrian access. And that southerly gap would be an excellent pedestrian enhancement in the area if there was a safe pedestrian connection.
A safe pedestrian.
But it'd be far better than a 2-way pedestrian flow against those ample parking spaces. It's very narrow. But if that gated area, the place is currently gated now.
Mhm.
Would accommodate pedestrian flow between the basin and Mason Street, I would find that very, close to what the DOT regs are for enhanced pedestrian design.
Yeah, it's hard to dispute that. I think the overriding factor though is it's just outside of the scope of this project. Flavia's got the north half of the building, Flavia does not have the south half of the building or anything that would happen there.
I don't know that site regulations differentiate them. This site being issued a special permit.
I mean, we're
I'm
already
not
dealing with
100% sure.
parts of the building that the tenant is not renting. Right, I mean, this new Pullman facade is in relation to. And presumably the tenant is not renting both the parking spaces that are being restricted to keep the price, that's the landlord to the whole. Or
It
they-
might- it might make sense to bring Art to our next hearing. Art has agreed, I don't know if the words are in the lease, but Art has agreed that this is all Flavia's.
So all the parking spaces are going to be exclusively for Sugarloaf?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean,
So
for what it's
we
worth,
would have no parking space.
I expect Art has other plans for the other side,
Okay.
and I'm not here to present those, but I think.
Well,
He's got ideas that aren't related to. Sugarloaf.
Yeah, in a DOD, if it's a first for rehabilitation. And reuse of existing space, parking requirements are. Waived.
I think the point is that if, depending on what the parking situation is, I think that the pedestrian experience is of the whole site is being taken into account since we're talking about this specific business.
So just to clarify, just like how we did with the co-op, where we had a site where we were just looking at one tenant space, but we did have to look at the pedestrian circulation of the entire site. So we weren't necessarily reviewing the facade of those other tenants, but we did make improvements to the overall pedestrian experience by, adding the handicap ramps and extending, even though that wasn't near the site, it was all about the pedestrians moving throughout the entire site.
Maybe helpful to at least approach that conversation with the building owner to see what works, because he has, I assume he, as a stakeholder, he has his own perspective and goals and objectives. I feel like there's always room to figure out something that can be enhanced and improved by, working together and taking these different perspectives into account. And I will say, if this project were to enhance the southern aisle, that would be a stronger, particularly with a pedestrian sort of access point, that would make the application stronger. I'm not saying it's necessary, but it'd make it stronger.
Mr. Chair, also, if I may, on this, what you're suggesting and the offline work. That you're suggesting, this could probably be accomplished, over in the break in between meetings as well.
I didn't say that out loud, but that was definitely what I would assume could be done.
Right.
And these, we're gonna need to get owner sign off on these items anyways, right? Don't we? Since the property owner requires.
They
this,
just
or-
have to sign the
The
application.
application.
Okay,
So usually with projects that require site plan review, we've just seen the owner be the applicant, and then the tenant be a part of the conversation, or like the secondary applicant. I think this is the first project that we've seen in a while where the owner is not involved in the conversation, and that just makes this discussion a bit more difficult the more recent.
let's talk about one. Yeah. Continue.
I'm gonna continue, clearly, I'll have a comment about the fencing and traffic flow, and for you guys to consider. Nothing can be done, nothing can be done, but something to discuss. With the restriping of the proposed parking as you have it there, I think we would want, as part of, I would recommend as part of this review, you have some additional directional signage, probably a couple of one-way signs at the Nason Street end, and at the other end, a couple of do not enter with one-way signs. That's an easy and cheap safety measure. Right now, there's one do not enter sign, and anybody who sneezes isn't gonna see it, and they're just gonna drive up there.
I saw two sneezing cars. this evening.
See, those got it. I will second what Julia mentioned. I would recommend, I know Bill brought up a good point about the public parking, but if it is on the applicant's property and those spaces are exclusively for the use of the applicant, I think that they should be signed appropriately for the tenant. So that's a comment. I think there's some benefit, to what you're proposing with the pedestrian seating. It may even satisfy one of the criteria that Bill read about pedestrian, or what was worded, improvements of
Yeah,
pedestrian.
enhancing the experience.
But I'm a little concerned about the actual, the construction of that wall. I think you may want to consider putting a baller on each end or something, because in a heavy winter storm, town plows that. And that 2.5 foot high wall or something, they're not even gonna see it. And they're gonna go right over that, and it's not gonna last it very long. I understand that's probably the only place you could put it, so I guess I'll ask the question. It seems odd that you're gonna have a pedestrian seating and a plaza area next to the delivery entrance only, where they can't even get in, but I recognize there's no other place to put it, so maybe that's why you put it there, but it should be discussed. You may need to make sure that the plan calls out specifically the materials that you're gonna use for the bike rack and the green space, whether that's a concrete pad or whatever, talk about dimensions, thickness, etc.
You'll see cuts for those.
As long as it's detailed on the plan and the materials are called out, I think that should be sufficient. I didn't check this yet, as I said, I haven't done a thorough review, but I'm assuming that the parking meets the current town zoning as far as angle spaces and so forth, dimensionally and angle wise, I'm guessing.
Yeah, we believe it does.
Okay,
May I make a comment about that? I find those spaces difficult to turn into already. My advice would be to have useful spaces instead of having more spaces. The radii, that turning radii is just, from my experience, it's like, so something that, can we just put some thought into the.
Let's like the fewer wider spaces.
Yes.
More narrow.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm pretty sure they require a relief request. Cause I think our aisle is 14.
yeah,
And I'm kind of curious. I heard earlier that the fire chief was okay there. But I guess since the trucks don't approach from that direction anymore, it doesn't matter.
maybe that's it.
Bill, did I hear you say the travel lane's 14?
I thought that was our minimum. Pretty sure it is.
I'll have to check it. We've got it. The line I have drawn in there and that I described earlier as a travel lane. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I'm wholly certain that existing conditions does not meet our.
Well, I know that we shortened up. We're proposing, I think it's the first 3 or 4, we're labeling compact. And it in effect shortens up the stripe, so it respects the travel lane. I can go measure what's out there. I suspect that what's out there between stripes and the Abacos building may be a lot.
But I mean, it's whatever you work out with Wayne, it's just something may require a formal request in the application for relief.
One
To
understood.
Bill's point, it may not meet it now, but you should at least, you have to ask for a waiver of that.
Yep.
So, yeah, interior driveways for one way are 14 feet width.
All right, well, what else you got?
You mentioned no dumpster or trash facilities. I'm just, we don't need to get into a lengthy conversation, but I'm just kind of curious how that's gonna be dealt with. I know that the different facilities have special criteria and they deal with it very discreetly, but if you're not gonna put a trash cart out there, even, a regular residential type cart, you're gonna have just stuff, just interior, is what I'm understanding, and then it'll be removed by personnel somehow.
Yeah, we're gonna put our heads together and define that more crisply
Okay.
for you, but
Can I interrupt one? So there's 2 types of trash, regular trash. With, as we said, will be interior and barrel with wheels and so forth to be rolled out. The other trash is cannabis trash.
Yeah.
Waste that will be kept in the security area and other barrels. Those have to be removed by a transporter that's allowed to remove them. They're taken to another site. they're burned or they're mixed with kitty litter or whatever, so it can never be used again, and then it gets used as compost.
Okay, that's great, appreciate that. It's just, it'd be good to think about that, because like, there's gonna, regular, like. Residential trash, there's gonna be paper plates, napkins, stuff like that. Where are those going and how, because there's no public dumpsters back here, I don't think, right? So
Not yet.
they have to, right, I know. but they
Well-
have to-
Applications in.
So that's just the other part that, again, where you're a tenant and not the owner. Art does have a dumpster back there, it is on
Okay.
wheel. Hopefully, we're going to be trying to corral all those dumpsters back there, but if you have minimal trash. Where he already has a dumpster of a decent size, is that something where you guys could share that, if you're only gonna have that?
And I believe the existing dumpster location is being displaced by the proposed plaza.
Correct.
So we would need to know where it's going.
Is there a limit on size for the dumpster? You can make it a bigger dumpster to share with art? Is there
So,
I realize, and for lack of a better term, I think you may have stepped in it. The dumpster conversation in the back parking lot is very
By the
tricky.
top?
Was that?
Hot top?
Yes, yeah.
but
So-
I think that would be helpful for the next conversation, the next.
Sure, let's just really understand our scope when it comes to dumpster conversations about this. I don't want it to get out of hand yet. So
Fair enough.
just Wayne, like really carve out what's required for our scope for conversation and only. I don't wanna tie these guys into. a large
I mean, from my perspective, if they say they coordinate with the building owner, they're gonna use his dumpster, end of story.
You work that out
Yeah.
and provide your recommendation.
I still need to know where the dumpsters go.
Right, fair enough, Bill, that's good question.
Like,
About that, talk about the bollards. I'm assuming, based on what you, well, I'm not assuming, you're gonna have potentially some signs on the building for, parking. I recommend you have some signs showing customer access. If the back is only, security and, delivery, people may see that pedestrian area back there and naturally gravitate towards that. I think you should just have some signs that point towards Mason Street, mounted right on the wall or something like that. And obviously, Tim, we can talk about the whole delivery thing.
And Wayne, this is not a comprehensive list, this is just your.
Yeah, this is just what I'm noticing tonight. Yeah, Chris, thank you.
So how this works is that Wayne provides a formal letter of review. That he's going to request responses on, specifically itemized out. It doesn't sound like it's gonna be substantial.
That's all I have right now.
Can I ask, that there also be some discussion about handicap accessibility?
So what I saw,
The proposed parking is not.
you've got, when I looked at the plan this afternoon briefly, it looks like you had two spots, right? And they were located on this end of the building. I thought you had customer access on both ends, but now I'm hearing you don't. So I think you need to think about relocating that handicap spot.
Put them both toward Nason.
Yeah, is this supposed to be as close as possible to the access?
And I would also point out that it's heavily sloped, so the chance of you making a legitimate van access. to that space is-
Bill makes a good point.
Is that-
However. The existing curb cut on the south on the street would provide an excellent. Handicap accessible loading zone space. The best we would have in town.
You want
That would be.
What are you talking about, Mr. Crenshaw?
It's not gonna be on the side of the building.
You're talking about here.
The unused curb cut, the curb cut that has not been used in several years. Would provide room to lay in a perfect handicap accessible. Loading zone, actually. Lowest.
So Wayne,
That's something to think about.
yeah, Wayne, I think you're. We also consider. 88, do we have to consider 88 the lines of the back portion or since it's with the pavers in the back?
Yeah, I don't think there's no access there. And there is, that new generic ex-ATM space is a new building space, so that has to have ADA access. So whatever it is, it needs to be accessible.
Does it, or when it becomes a new business, does it need to be accessible?
Well, excellent question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ask the building
There's
inspector.
gonna be 2 doors there?
Well, I would say this second door, we don't know that there's anything public there.
That could
Yeah.
just say storage space in the building, that could. I think that that's a question to be dealt with. I mean, certainly, if I were putting in a brand new door and someday it might become a rental unit, I would put in a door that was accessible now, right? But
Yeah.
again, that's a question for art. That's not,
That, I think it is kind of outside our scope potentially. I could argue with both ways.
Well, I'm still confused whether that part of the construction is part of this permit then.
And that's the thing, if the building owner was the applicant, I think it was clear to be. So I think that's where the conflict is.
So I'm a little stuck on how any special permit conditions will stick. Will it always stick to the owner
Mhm.
or will it stick to the building permit?
It's with the business,
Just with a business, so if we require.
but the
If
business
we
at that
require
location,
that plaza be built out of gold. You know, that requirement would go away once the business closes, and the owner could take it away, right?
I'd have to look at all the possible angles because it may be tied to a site plan or something like that, you know, with
Well,
that.
that's, yeah.
Can we just be
Yeah.
thoughtful about those things so we
Yeah.
set these guys up for success?
Yeah.
That's what I really want here.
Mhm.
I want them to get a path to success where they don't get pinched later on.
Yeah.
And if we can help out with that conversation to help you not get pinched, I'm happy to do so.
Just for purposes of the use, it's only for this applicant. If we leave and someone else goes in, someone else would have to apply for the use again. It only runs with us.
Facility, yes.
Right.
If it's a restaurant, there'd be other sort of requirements, but yes. So
I
when,
mean, any number of changes of use could trigger all kinds of differences.
so when your initial review list is, have you gone through it all? Are you done?
That's it for now, yes, for thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna take public comments. I don't see anyone in the room,
We have one here.
so I will open up for public comments on. For public comment, anyone that's available can either raise their hand using the raise hand feature or just come off mute. And speak. And I will leave public comment open until. We probably end for this evening. So feel free to speak up or raise your hand if you want. I'm gonna turn. Okay. Oh, okay.
You scared them off, Greg.
I do that sometimes. How else can we help tonight? What else can we help with your team tonight?
I think you've done a great, I mean, helping us, pointing us in,
Help you be successful.
helping, pointing us in the right direction. Really coming up with a plan that's good for us, that's good for the community, good for the people using downtown. And I think everything we discussed is doable. Question is on the other side. We have no control over the south side of the building. There's also a question because of the narrowness between the two properties. Whether that could actually be actually a right of way for cars to go out because it's a very small spot between Art's property and the property behind, so it might not even be doable as the purpose of public access.
My advice to you is to get with Wayne and just talk through all these elements in detail. From my experience, the more you upfront these conversations, the better off we are. Wayne knows our regs and can help you guide you through those regs so that, again, like I said, you don't get pinched by something, either with the building inspector or anything else, so.
There's a lot of good questions going back and forth, but I like the idea that you're gonna work with this gentleman. He's gonna get back to you quickly. It expedites, I like that, rather than another meeting.
The conversation, now, what, the way I see this is, there's design, what's called conflict. From an objective standpoint, there's some, I'd say some design conflicts. That can get worked out, and I think the best way to do that is offline. And then let's find a time that's appropriate to come back to this board and present what got worked out. Does that make sense?
That's also the plan.
I'm gonna go.
Chris, is there any landscape regulations that will apply here? They have to do that silly little, you need a landscape artist sign off and your planting plan and all that stuff.
If this was a full site plan review, I think we would consider landscaping. I think it's at our determination at this point, because this is neither one nor the other. Not just a use conversation, and it's not a full site plan design.
Okay,
And they're not proposing landscape.
yeah, they are. We have landscape, I
Yeah,
don't,
a little landscape.
If you mean vegetation, yes,
Correct.
a little bit.
Yeah, a couple of shrubs or something.
we're trying to check all the boxes, if we require something, then it should be in the application.
I'll redo the regs again. When I was looking at this, I don't see much opportunity from a ground soil standpoint to add landscaping. Are we reducing? Sorry, it's late. Impervious soils, what is the delta on pervious and impervious? Yeah.
We propose to remove some impervious asphalt and replace it with planting space for vegetation to be determined. The sum of that would be on the order of a couple of 100 square feet. Our intent is to do a little bit of that in a way that's visible and evident, and you know, a pedestrian notices it enough to say, oh, that's nice, that's a little patch of green. We don't, you know, harbor any fantasies that we're going to improve the, you know, groundwater recharge or water quality of the Assabet, but it's a little something that we'd like to do.
I think in that case, I would just recommend that if you do any sort of vegetation, that it just be a native plant.
All right, back to the board. Any other final thoughts from the board?
Yes. I just want to put it out there. I know that there's been some questioning about the pedestrian seating in the back. I agree that if maybe DPW or someone would have an idea on how to make it safer in terms of the plowing in the winter. As a person who walks through the basement with my 3 small children all the time, this is very exciting. I like the idea of having a space that is seating, has safety, you know, like an area where you could kind of pull off for a second. The basin is a little chaotic and a little, this is appealing to me. I just want to put it out there. It's called fixed concrete seating and 20-inch wide stone bench. Would be good to know which one it's gonna be.
Either concrete or stone.
Okay, great.
Mr. Chair, would it be something the board would like if we were able to meet with the owner as well offline?
I think that would be appropriate.
That's mine's, it's not necessarily an instruction, but I find that might be helpful, Jim, wouldn't you say?
I do too. We've talked now about the property on the other side, this fence and this and that, and
Yeah,
I think
it's
it would be appropriate for the owner to be here as part of this whole operation.
Yes, well, I know a lot of this is central to the comment I made about the fence and the circulation. It's very well possible that he may say, I'm not interested in doing that, and if that's not in your control, that's fine. I just, for the board, I think if there's something written back to us explaining why it can't be accomplished.
I agree, his presence will be helpful.
Yeah.
In this context, it's easy to look at that and think of it just as available space
Yeah.
in service of our project. It's kind of human nature. But if he's here representing a whole distinct other business with plans and aspirations, and in fact, he owns the property, it'll be helpful for us all to understand that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Would it be helpful we meet offline before this?
I think it would be helpful, but that's up between the applicants, the property owner. I'm instructing town staff to be available for those conversations, so. That I can instruct.
And to clarify, it may feel like we're reaching with this, but we only get a certain number of opportunities to deal with sites as a whole like this. So we have to take advantage of it as much as we can in terms of things like pedestrian flow and traffic flow, just because, you know, downtown, it's a slow moving object. So when these opportunities arise, it's a really good chance to get to speak to the building owner or whoever is able to make some changes that could really affect positively the whole situation.
That's all we have, I think. Jim, any final thoughts?
No, I don't have any final thoughts, but I would strongly ask that the building owner be here at the next meeting. It would make me feel much more comfortable when we're talking about not only the building, but the property around it.
So, thank you. Nice, really well done, guys. Great presentation, and I'm here to help you understand what a path towards success could be, so please reach out if I can help or clarify on any point.
Mr. Chairman, when would you like to continue this hearing?
Do we have to make a choice now?
Yeah.
Bill, why don't you propose a few and you?
Well, Okay, January 10th, we have our zoning bylaw amendments, and we have what else?
129 compliance.
Yeah, so I mean
Potential
that,
of it.
yeah, I mean,
That's
so I
a little
mean,
busy.
we could, I don't know, if you, I guess depending on the progress made, we could do the 10th, but it would be a packed agenda. And then we have a 24th. January 24th.
I would.
If we were going the 10th, we'd be
people want to
third,
continue on as quickly as possible to be able to get your applications through and so on and so forth. for example.
Yeah, could we do the 10th? And then if we haven't been able to solve off, on the side, then we could always ask for a continuance.
I think the point is you might not get time on the 10th.
It might be continued.
You are at the end of 2 or 3 other things, big things.
And I
We
just,
were alone and we took 2.5
yeah,
hours.
I guess it's somewhat for the board to determine how much, if we come to a lot of agreements on everything, if it's possible that this wouldn't be as long to finish the discussion, but that's really.
My guess is that we will not be able to hear you on the 10th because of the agenda that's already established that we.
Meeting stuff, that's,
Some reasons we cannot change.
As the applicant who, you know, is presumably paying for all of you to be here for this long amount of time, if the next one, we have you on the agenda and you end up getting continued, then, you know.
She likes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We try to keep those things.
Also, Mr. Chairman, just consider, I mean, I'll try to get Tim my comments by, early next week, but like after that, it's like Christmas for a week and all that. Everyone, and then you're not back till third or fourth, right?
Yeah.
Then the next mayor meeting is on the
The
10th.
10th is not, I don't think the 10th is.
You're not gonna make a lot of
And
progress.
it's better to do it right than to do it
Yeah.
bad.
From
What
my
do we got,
experience.
24th after that?
24.
the 24th, I may not be here, but we will have either.
It'll be a much better meeting.
Wow.
I haven't been able to dig on Bill and once, okay? I was waiting.
At least one of these days.
Drive to this way.
No, I want Julie to do it.
And I would make a motion that we continue this hearing until the 24th of January. What time though?
7 p.m.
I'll second that. All in favor by hand? That's 5-0 to continue to the 24th of January at 7 p.m.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Very well done.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Now that it's over, it would be nice, I parked in the basin tonight. It would be nice to see that looking better than. There's some nice restaurants down there. It really should be a much more welcome.
You are welcome to put that on record, too.
Now I know.
Yeah.
It is on record.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah, there's too many dumpsters.
There you go.
Oh, there you go. Hitting all the hot buttons. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And in lieu of having a conversation about the next year's goals, I will draft the next year's goals for everyone to review.
Great.
Thank you, guys. Yeah. Email them. Yeah.
I drafted a few suggestions.
Thank you. You can pass them, you know, ignore that.
This is the last one. He didn't. Then you guys have all this. Bye, Tim. Oh, here is my suggestion of what I've got going on.
Paper's kind of small. Can you print it on the bigger one?
Yeah. Consideration of classes are working. Yeah. There you are.
Oh, God, number 5.
I don't want any of you. All right.
Number 5.
Well,
Duly noted. Bill. Yes, we didn't need to use.
That's all we're doing. All you-
which one?
Let's, listen, I sent an email and I never heard back from the guy on the zoning board, so it's not my problem.
He is not on his own board anymore.
Thank you, Julian.
Bye.
Anything else we'll go.
Bill, do you have any updates? And if you could make them brief, because it's late.
No, I gave him before you came.
Thank you.
That's one.
This
is used.
Team, thank you.
Yeah.
What?
Jim, can you,
What?
did you make a motion? Okay,
No, okay, I have something to say.
sorry.
I just want to thank everyone for. I wanted to thank everyone for a wonderful year. You guys are a great board to work with and you make me proud and I wait home. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jim.
I would move that we close when the heat goes up.
I'll second that.
All in favor? I can. All right, 5-0 close.
Thanks, everybody. That was.
Just a quick question, and this is off the record. We spent a lot of time tonight talking about all this cannabis stuff and so on, how they get in, how they do this, how they.